I'm Pedro from Remix, and let's migrate some Remix apps to Vite. Let's start with something basic. I'll pull down the default template with create remix at latest, and I'll call this project basic. Let's jump into our project and open up our editor. In the Remix docs, I'll open up the migration guide by going down to Future Vite Unstable, and then navigating to Migrating. Let's get started. Let's set up Vite by installing it as a dev dependency, and by replacing our Remix config with a Vite config, and we can make that a .ts file. And let's replace those contents with this snippet here. Next, let's set up our types. So we'll replace our remix env.d.ts with just env.d.ts. So we're going to put other things in there now. And sure, let's update those imports. And so now, if you look at this file, we don't want to be using this remix run dev types anymore. Instead, we want to be using these Vite client types. This is going to let Vite handle imports for assets like .css files. And yep, we've already changed our ts config to point to m.d.ts instead. Next, let's make sure that the live reload component comes before the scripts component. This is a temporary workaround during unstable to ensure that HMR works like you expect. So let's go into the root route in app root, and let's find the live reload component. Yep, there it is. So let's just move that to be right above scripts. Now we're ready to migrate our server. Looking at our package.json file, we're using remix dev without the -c flag, and we're also using remix serve in production. So that means we're using the Remix app server. So let's just grab the updated build and dev scripts and replace our old ones with these new ones. And with the simple app, that's all we need. It should run on Vite. Now let's try migrating an app with a custom server. We'll look at Express as an example, but note that any server that's compatible with Connect middleware should work the same way. Let's pull down the Express template with npx create remix at latest, but this time we'll use the template flag, and we'll call our project Express. Once again, let's dive into our project and open up our code editor. I went ahead and repeated the same basic steps to set up Vite, set up our types, and put live reload before scripts. But now we're going to follow the migrating from a custom server instructions because our app is using a server.js file. So I'm going to rename this file to server.m.js, and that's just to be explicit that we're now using ESM to author our server file. And I'm going to edit the contents to just be this snippet here. So what exactly are we doing here? Well, this is just a standard Express app that is serving static assets in production, and then it's using Remix to serve all of the other requests that it gets, and then it's listening on port 3000 and console logging. The only difference is that in development, we're creating a Vite server, and then we're delegating the assets to that Vite server, and we're also delegating any of the other Remix requests for loaders or actions or the initial SSR render to Vite as well, right here. That way we get the fantastic developer experience from Vite even when using a custom server. And notice that for any other requests like this one, we're using the exact same middleware to process both dev requests and prod requests. Finally, let's go to our package.json scripts and update those. So I'll just grab these right here and open up our package.json. And let's just replace the old ones with the new ones. And let's add a comma. And this makes it really clear that we're running the same server script in production as we are in development. And if you're into running everything with TypeScript, you could replace Node with TSX, or you could run node -- loader and install the TSM loader, and that way you could use a server.ts instead. But just note that this is going to add a little bit of overhead to strip the types from the server.ts file before your server actually starts up. So if that's worth it for you, go ahead. But for us, let's just stick to running pure JavaScript just to keep things nice and fast. All right, let's give it a shot. Let's do one more migration, this time for something a little bit more complex. For that, let's use the Indy stack, which comes with a database, auth, an ORM, styling through Tailwind, third-party API mocking, and more. Let's grab the Indy stack with npx create remix at latest, again using the template flag, but this time looking at the Indy stack, and we'll call this Indy. And let's dive in one last time. Once again, I've already gone through the steps of setting up Vite, setting up our types, putting live reload before scripts, as well as grabbing the new build and dev scripts. But there's a couple more things to do. This app was actually using some values in Remix config that we might want to update in our plugin. So let's see what those were. So originally it was using these values. So cache directory no longer makes sense with Vite. Vite is completely handling that for us. Same thing with server module format. Vite is really ESM first, and they're deprecating CJS in Vite 5 anyways. So let's go ahead and remove that. And we can keep this ignore routes files config in here. We could keep reading through the migration guide, but let's just try running it right now and seeing what happens. So let's run npm run dev and open up our app. Looks like it's having trouble resolving these tilde imports. This was never really a Remix thing, so with Vite, we're going to solve this through a plugin instead. Let's go back to the migration docs, and if we scroll down, we can see that there's going to be a section telling us all about configuring path aliases. So let's install this plugin. And let's add it to our Vite config. So let's import it and let's use it. Okay, and let's try running our app again. All right, that's looking quite good, but I noticed that there was this issue with Tailwind CSS inline. Something's happening with those styles. And if we look in the browser console, we can see again that something with Tailwind's not quite right here. So let's go back to the docs and see if we can find something about Tailwind. Looks like we've already got a post CSS config file, and Tailwind's already set up there, so these two steps look good. Okay, but it looks like we should be converting our Tailwind CSS import to a side effect import, so let's go ahead and do that. So inside of our app root, at the top here, let's convert this import to a side effect import and get rid of the old one. And now we don't need to explicitly pass it into the links function. And I saw earlier in the docs here that if the only thing we have left in our links function is the CSS bundle href, we can actually go ahead and just get rid of that altogether. So let's do that. And let's also get rid of these unused imports at the top. Let's go back to our app and just make sure that there aren't any console errors here. Yep, looking good. There's one more thing to do here. If we take a look at the package.json, we'll see that we have this leftover dev serve script from before we transitioned to Vite. And it's using binode to make sure that we're running our MSW mocks whenever we're running our dev server. So how can we do that same thing when we're running Vite dev now? Well, let's just use binode the same way that we were doing it before. So let's say binode --require /mocks. And then we'd like to use the Vite package, and specifically, we'd like to use the Vite command within the Vite package. So now let's get rid of this vestigial dev serve script, and let's just make sure that things are working for us. So let's run npm run dev. And now we can see that not only is our app running, but also our mock server is running. So we're free to use MSW to mock out any third-party APIs. And that's how to migrate your Remix apps to Vite. Now, your app may be using other features that may require things like MDX or different styling solutions, so make sure to check out the migration guide for that. And if you're having any issues, scroll down in that migration guide until you get to troubleshooting and check out those sections there. Let us know what you think.